At a luxurious gala, a pregnant woman witnesses her partner shamelessly flirting in front of everyone. Minutes later, he assaults her with a slap, convinced that his power exempts him from respect. But that blow does not destroy her. It marks the beginning of her liberation. At a luxurious gala, a pregnant woman witnesses her partner shamelessly flirting in front of everyone. Minutes later, he assaults her with a slap, convinced that his power exempts him from respect. But that blow does not destroy her. It marks the beginning of her liberation. The ballroom of the Royal Grand Hotel gleamed under the light of Austrian crystals that hung from the ceiling like jewels suspended in the air. Marina Kensington adjusted the navy blue dress that barely managed to conceal her 6-month belly and squeezed the small, sweaty hand of her 3-year-old son, Gabriel, who clung to her leg, his eyes wide at the sight of so many elegant people. The boy wore a small tuxedo that his grandmother had insisted on buying, but which now seemed too uncomfortable for a child who only wanted to play. The soft music of a string quartet filled the air as entrepreneurs, executives, and investors circulated with glasses of French champagne in hand, exchanging superficial greetings and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. This charity gala had been organized by Kensington Developments, her father Robert Kensington's company, one of the most influential men in the London property market. The event aimed to strengthen ties between business partners and, of course, display power. Marina watched it all with a familiar tightness in her chest that had become common in recent weeks. It wasn't the first time she had felt invisible amidst luxurious crowds, but that night something different hung in the air, a tension she couldn't name but which made her heart race and her hands tremble slightly. Gabriel tugged at her skirt and asked for water in the whiny voice of someone tired of standing. She smiled at her son and promised they would leave soon, though she knew it was a lie. They couldn't leave until Roderick decided, and Roderick never wanted to leave when there were spotlights. Roderick Mitchell, her partner for 5 years, father of Gabriel and the child growing in her womb, director of expansion at Kensington Developments, a position he had earned more through her surname than by his own merit, though he would never admit it. Marina saw him across the ballroom, impeccable in his black tuxedo, his hair perfectly combed, a seductive smile on his face as he conversed animatedly with Larissa Finch, the company's new marketing manager. Marina felt her stomach churn. It wasn't just the pregnancy. It was the way Roderick leaned his body towards Larissa, how his eyes sparkled in a way she hadn't seen for months when he looked at her. It was his hand, lightly touching the woman's bare arm, his laughter too loud, the excessive proximity. And the worst part was that he didn't care to hide it. There, in front of everyone, he openly flirted as if Marina didn't exist, as if the belly she carried meant nothing. An elderly lady with grey hair and a pearl necklace walked past Marina and cast a look of pity, disguised as solidarity. That hurt more than any words. The humiliation was not just in what Roderick was doing, but in the fact that everyone saw it, everyone knew. And yet, life went on, conversations flowed, champagne was served, and no one said anything. Gabriel began to complain louder, and Marina picked him up with effort, feeling the extra weight press on her already strained spine. She walked slowly to one of the side tables where there were juices and small sandwiches, trying to distract the boy. As Gabriel bit into a piece of bread, Marina couldn't help but look at Roderick again. He was even closer to Larissa now, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh and place her hand on his chest in a way that was too intimate to be merely professional cordiality. Tears burned Marina's eyes, but she blinked quickly to ward them off. Crying there at that moment would give everyone more reason to whisper about her. It was enough to be the pregnant, emotionally abandoned woman. She didn't also need to be the pathetic woman crying in public. She took a deep breath, trying to control the anger and pain that grew within her like a storm about to explode. That's when her father appeared beside her, imposing as always, with his perfectly aligned grey suit and serious expression that intimidated even the most experienced executives. Robert Kensington was 62 years old, with white hair, broad shoulders, and a gaze that pierced through people as if he could read their most secret thoughts. He placed a hand on Marina's shoulder and asked softly if everything was all right. She forced a smile and said yes, but her eyes betrayed the lie. Robert followed his daughter's gaze and saw exactly what she was seeing. Roderick and Larissa, increasingly close, increasingly brazen. Robert's jaw tightened. He knew men like Roderick, ambitious, superficial, who saw women as trophies and relationships as business transactions. He had never fully approved of his daughter's relationship with that man, but Marina was in love, and he had respected her choice. Now, seeing the pain etched on his pregnant daughter's face, Robert regretted not having intervened sooner. Marina put Gabriel back on the floor and told her father she needed to handle something. Robert tried to hold her arm, but she was already walking towards Roderick with firm steps, her heels clicking against the marble with determination. People began to notice that something was about to happen. Conversations were interrupted mid-sentence. Curious glances turned towards the pregnant woman crossing the ballroom with a tense face and clenched fists. When Marina approached Roderick and Larissa, the music seemed to dim, as if even the musicians sensed the imminent confrontation. Roderick turned to her with a poorly disguised expression of annoyance, as if her presence were an inconvenience. Marina felt anger rise in her throat like boiling lava. She looked at Larissa, who averted her gaze, embarrassed, and then fixed her eyes on Roderick's. "Aren't you ashamed?" Marina asked, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm here carrying your child, and you're showing off with her in front of everyone. I have nothing left, Roderick, nothing but humiliation." Roderick rolled his eyes and took a step back, as if her drama was exaggerated and pathetic. "You're making a scene, Marina. We're just talking. You don't need to freak out over nothing." "Talking," Marina repeated bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Talking? While I'm alone taking care of our son, you're talking to half the women in this city. You think I'm blind, Roderick. You think I don't see, that I don't feel." People around them began to discreetly move away, but without missing anything that was happening. Some held their phones, clearly recording. Larissa murmured an apology and quickly left, leaving Roderick alone to face Marina. He took a step forward, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You're humiliating me," he said through clenched teeth. "Shut up and go back to your seat." Marina felt something break inside her. It wasn't just her heart, it was the last glimmer of hope that this man could love her, respect her, or at least, consider her. She opened her mouth to reply, but before any words came out, Roderick raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed through the ballroom like thunder. The music stopped. Conversations ceased. The silence was absolute. Marina stumbled sideways, her hand automatically going to her burning cheek, her eyes filled with tears, but this time she didn't hold them back. Gabriel, who was a few feet behind with his grandfather, began to cry loudly, shouting for her. The boy's crying filled the deafening emptiness of the ballroom as hundreds of eyes fixed on the scene like spectators of a tragedy. Roderick seemed to realize too late what he had done. He looked around, saw the expressions of shock, the phones pointed at him, the silent judgment of everyone. But before he could say anything, a deep, icy voice cut through the air like a blade. "Get out of here now," Robert Kensington said, appearing beside his daughter with Gabriel in his arms. The boy extended his little arms towards his mother, crying desperately. Roderick opened his mouth to protest, but Robert took a step forward, his posture imposing and threatening. "I said, get out. Now. And tomorrow morning you'll be in my office. We have a lot to discuss." Roderick swallowed hard, tried to maintain his composure, but everyone could see the fear in his eyes. He adjusted his jacket, cast a final glance at Marina, and left the ballroom under the weight of hundreds of accusatory stares. Marina collapsed into her father's arms as Gabriel clung to her, crying. The ballroom remained silent for a few more seconds before someone finally resumed a quiet conversation, but everyone knew that night would never be forgotten. The night seemed endless. Marina sat on the king-size bed in the guest room of her father's Belgravia mansion, staring blankly at the white wall while Gabriel slept beside her, clutching the teddy bear he carried everywhere. Her cheek still stung where Roderick had hit her, and every time she closed her eyes, Marina saw the scene repeating in slow motion. His hand rising, the impact, the sound, the stares, the silence. Gabriel's cries echoed in her mind like a hammer beating relentlessly. She lightly touched her swollen face and felt the tears return. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the humiliation of being assaulted in front of hundreds of people, of having her dignity shattered like glass on the floor. It was the brutal confirmation that the man with whom she had built a life, with whom she had dreamed of a future, had never truly loved her. Roderick had always been about Roderick. She merely played a decorative role in his social climb. The bedroom door opened silently, and Robert entered with 2 glasses of water and an ice pack. He sat on the edge of the bed and handed the pack to Marina, who pressed it against her face with a sigh of relief. Robert watched his daughter with a mixture of sadness and contained fury. He had raised Marina alone after her mother passed away when the girl was only 7. He knew every expression on his daughter's face, every shade of pain or joy. And at that moment, what he saw was a broken woman trying to hold herself together from shattered pieces. "I'll handle this," Robert said, his voice deep and firm. "He won't get away with it. You and the children will be safe. I promise." Marina slowly shook her head, still not fully believing what had happened. "I should have seen it sooner, Dad. The signs were all there. The messages on his phone that he hid, the business trips that lasted too long, the way he looked at me with such indifference. But I was pregnant with Gabriel, then pregnant again. I wanted it to work so badly that I pretended not to see. You are not to blame, Marina. Nothing you did or didn't do justifies what he did to you. Nothing." Marina closed her eyes and let the tears flow freely. Robert took her hand and squeezed it tightly, conveying the solidity she so desperately needed at that moment. He stayed there in silence, just holding his daughter's hand as she cried softly so as not to wake Gabriel. After a few minutes, he said he had contacted the best family lawyer in London and that she would come in the morning. He also scheduled an appointment with Marina's private obstetrician to ensure the baby was well after the night's stress. Marina merely nodded, too exhausted to speak. Robert kissed her forehead and left the room, closing the door carefully. But instead of going to sleep, he went down to his private office, a room of noble wood with shelves full of legal books and business contracts. He poured himself an aged whiskey, took a long sip, and picked up the phone. He made 3 calls, the first to the lawyer, Dr. Cecilia Anderson, confirming the morning meeting. The second to his personal assistant, asking her to check all of Roderick Mitchell's records at the company for the past 6 months. The third to the security director of the Royal Grand Hotel, requesting a copy of the gala recordings. Robert Kensington was not a man to leave things to chance. He had built an empire from scratch, faced economic crises, unfair competitors, and suffocating bureaucracy. And he had always won because he planned every move with surgical precision. Roderick Mitchell had made the mistake of underestimating him. He had hit his daughter, humiliated his family, and stained the Kensington name. And for that, he would pay dearly. While Robert slowly drank his whiskey, planning his next steps, Roderick Mitchell was on the other side of the city, in his penthouse apartment in Canary Wharf, pacing his living room like a caged animal. He had tried to call Marina dozens of times, but all calls went straight to voicemail. He had also tried to send messages, but none had been read. He knew he had crossed a line. He knew that hitting Marina, especially in front of everyone, had been a monumental mistake. But in the moment of anger, he had simply lost control. Roderick poured himself straight vodka and drank directly from the bottle. His head spun between regret and self-justification. She didn't need to make that scene, he thought. She didn't need to humiliate me in front of everyone. I just reacted. But deep down, in a part of himself he refused to access Roderick, knew the truth. He had never loved Marina. He had loved her surname, her father's influence, the door she had opened to the elite corporate world. And now that door was closing, he felt panic. He called Larissa, but she didn't answer either. After the night's scandal, she was probably distancing herself as much as possible to avoid being associated with the incident. Roderick threw his phone onto the sofa and slumped into the leather armchair, his head in his hands. Everything was falling apart too fast. He needed to fix this somehow. But how? The next morning, Marina woke, up to Gabriel jumping on the bed asking for breakfast. She smiled at her son, hiding her sadness, and they went down together to the mansion kitchen where the cook had already prepared fresh pastries, fresh fruit, and orange juice. Robert was sitting at the table reading the newspaper with his usual serious expression. He folded the newspaper when Marina entered and asked how she had slept. "Not much," she replied honestly, as she served Gabriel a pastry. "But I'm all right." "Dr. Cecilia will arrive in an hour," Robert said. "She will advise you on all your rights. Protective order, custody of Gabriel, alimony, everything." Marina nodded, slowly chewing a piece of papaya. The word rights sounded strange in her mouth. She had never needed to fight for rights before. She had always been protected, cared for, loved. But now she was entering a battlefield she hadn't chosen, facing an enemy who knew all her weaknesses. Exactly at 10 o'clock, Dr. Cecilia Anderson arrived at the mansion. She was a 50-year-old woman with neatly cut black hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and a navy blue pantsuit that conveyed seriousness and competence. She greeted Marina with firmness and empathy at the same time, and for 2 hours she explained step by step what would be done. An urgent protective order to prevent Roderick from approaching, filing a police report, requesting the hotel recordings, process for regulating custody and child support. Each word was a piece of armor that Marina slowly donned, preparing for the war that was to come. At the same time, in the mirrored building of Kensington Developments on Regent Street, Roderick Mitchell entered the reception with a knot in his stomach. The message he had received early that morning was clear and direct. Robert Kensington summoned him for a meeting at 11 o'clock. It wasn't an invitation. It was an order. Roderick went up to the 20th floor where the presidency was located. Robert's secretary, Mrs. Martha, a 60-year-old woman who had worked with him for 30 years, looked at Roderick with a cutting coldness and simply said that Mr. Kensington was waiting for him. Roderick knocked on the mahogany door and entered. Robert was sitting behind his imposing desk, his hands clasped over a folder of documents. He did not invite Roderick to sit, but Roderick sat anyway, trying to maintain some composure. Robert stared at him for long seconds without saying anything, and this silence was more terrifying than any shout. Finally, Robert opened the folder and pushed some papers towards Roderick. "You are suspended from your duties indefinitely. No salary, no access to facilities, no contact with clients or partners. You will receive a formal notification later today." Roderick felt his blood run cold. "This is an exaggeration. It was a moment of losing control. I can explain." "Explain what, Roderick? That you hit my pregnant daughter in front of 300 people? Or perhaps you want to explain these hotel bills in the company's name, where you hosted Larissa Finch on 3 different trips in the last 4 months." Roderick paled. "That's different. That's another matter." "No, it's the same matter. You are a man without character, without ethics, and without a future in this company. And if it's up to me, without a future anywhere in this market." Roderick stood up abruptly, fear giving way to anger. "You can't destroy me like this. I have rights." "You lost your rights the moment you laid a hand on my daughter. Now get out of my office before I call security." Roderick stormed out of the room, slamming the door, but outside his legs gave way, and he had to lean against the wall. Everything was falling apart. Everything. On Tuesday morning, the UK woke up watching the video. The scene of Roderick slapping Marina had been recorded by at least 5 different people, and one of the recordings leaked to social media overnight. In a few hours, the video accumulated millions of views. Hashtags like "Justice for Marina" and "Charak Abuser Exposed" dominated the trending topics. Television commentators debated the case on morning shows. Legal experts explained women's protection laws. The scandal had transcended London's business circles and become a national issue. Marina was sitting on the balcony of her father's mansion, drinking chamomile tea and trying not to look at her phone, but it was impossible. Every notification that arrived was a familiar person showing solidarity or morbid curiosity. She turned off the device and closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The morning sun gently touched her face, but it didn't bring the comfort she sought. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if she were naked before the whole world. Dr. Cecilia arrived again, this time accompanied by a private investigator named Finlay Maxwell, a bald man of 45 with sharp eyes and a discreet demeanor. He had worked for Robert for years on delicate company matters and was now tasked with gathering all necessary evidence against Roderick. Finley presented Marina with images obtained from the hotel, which clearly showed the moment of the assault from different angles. He also brought bank transaction records that indicated suspicious transfers from Roderick to third-party accounts. "This here," Finley explained, pointing to a spreadsheet on his tablet, "are expenses that Roderick classified as corporate events. But when we cross-referenced the dates with the company's official agenda, we discovered that he was using Kensington Developments funds to pay for hotels, restaurants, and trips that had nothing to do with work." Marina looked at the numbers with a mixture of astonishment and disgust. She knew Roderick had always been ambitious, but she hadn't imagined he had reached this point. Dr. Cecilia meticulously noted everything and assured her that this information would be included in the legal proceedings being prepared. At 11 o'clock, Marina was taken by Robert to the office of Dr. Beatrice Sinclair, her trusted obstetrician. The doctor, a woman in her 40s with curly hair tied in a bun, received Marina with warmth and concern. After a detailed ultrasound and monitoring exams, Dr. Beatrice smiled in relief and said that the baby was fine, with normal heartbeats and no signs of fetal distress, despite the emotional stress Marina had faced. "You are strong, Marina. Your body is protecting this child, but you need to take care of yourself too. No excessive tension, no skipping meals, no sleepless nights. Your well-being is essential for the baby's well-being." Marina promised she would try to follow the recommendations, although she knew it would be difficult to remain calm with everything that was happening. Before leaving the office, Dr. Beatrice held her hand and said something that echoed in Marina's mind for the rest of the day. "You are not the first woman to go through this, and unfortunately you won't be the last. But you have something many don't: support. Use it. Don't be ashamed to ask for help." Marina thanked her and left the office feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because the baby was well, sadness because she had never imagined her life would reach that point. When she married Roderick, when she became pregnant with Gabriel, when she discovered she was expecting her second child, she dreamed of a united family, of a home full of love and laughter. And now all that remained were lawsuits, protective orders, and viral videos. That afternoon, the urgent protective order was granted by the court. Judge Isabella Foster, known for her firm stance in cases of women's protection, ruled that Roderick Mitchell must maintain a minimum distance of 300 meters from Marina and Gabriel under penalty of immediate arrest if he failed to comply. The notification was sent electronically, and Roderick received the summons in the middle of the afternoon, while locked in his apartment, trying to understand how his life had fallen apart so quickly. He read the document 3 times, each word hammering in his head like a sentence. 300 meters. Forbidden to approach. Forbidden to make contact. Roderick felt a mixture of anger and panic. How would he explain this to his friends, to his family, to the colleagues who didn't know yet? How would he rebuild his reputation after being nationally exposed as an abuser? He tried to call Larissa again, but this time she answered only to coldly say that she no longer wanted contact with him. The company had already called her for a disciplinary meeting, and she had no intention of going down with him. Roderick hung up the phone and threw it against the wall with force, watching the screen shatter into 1,000 pieces. That's exactly how he felt. Shattered. Meanwhile, at Kensington Developments headquarters, Robert was meeting with the board of directors. The agenda was singular: Roderick Mitchell. The directors, all experienced men and women who had built solid careers alongside Robert, listened in silence as he presented the evidence of financial misconduct, false invoices, unauthorized expenses, diversion of funds. Everything was there meticulously documented. The financial director, Mr. Paul Rivers, a man with round glasses and a measured voice, shook his head in disapproval. "This is serious, Robert. Very serious. We need to act quickly before this becomes a bigger scandal than it already is." "We are already acting," Robert replied. "He is suspended. The internal audit has been activated, and soon he will be formally dismissed for just cause. But before that, I want to ensure that every diverted penny is recovered and that he answers legally for everything." The board unanimously approved the proposed measures. Larissa Finch would also be investigated, as several of the questionable expenses were in her name. She would be summoned to testify and, depending on her answers, could face dismissal and legal action. The next day, Larissa was called to the meeting room of the company's legal department. She entered nervously, wearing a grey suit that tried to convey professionalism, but her hands trembled visibly. Sitting at the table were 3 company lawyers and Dr. Cecilia herself, whom Robert had included as an observer. Larissa was questioned about the trips, the dinners, the hotels. She tried to deny any romantic involvement with Roderick, claiming everything was strictly professional. But when confronted with text messages recovered from the corporate system, messages that clearly indicated intimacy, her version began to crumble. She admitted there had been an approach, but insisted she didn't know Roderick was diverting company funds. "Even if that's true," one of the lawyers said, "you accepted unduly paid benefits. That constitutes complicity, at the very least. You have 2 options: collaborate fully with the investigation or face dismissal for just cause and possible legal action." Larissa left the meeting in tears, knowing that her career at Kensington Developments was over. She had bet on the wrong horse, and now she would pay the price. While all this was happening, Marina was at home recording a voice message on her phone. It wasn't to send to anyone. It was for herself. Dr. Cecilia had suggested she keep an emotional diary, a way to process everything she was experiencing. Marina preferred to record audio. "Today is day 1, she said, her voice trembling. "Day 1 of my new life. I don't know how it will be. I don't know if I'll succeed. But I have to try. For me. For Gabriel. For the baby that's coming. I deserve more than this. I deserve to be truly loved. I deserve respect. And if Roderick can't give me that, then I'll find it on my own." She paused the recording and let the tears fall. But this time, they weren't just tears of pain. There was something more, a small spark, almost imperceptible but real. Hope. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful night at the Royal Grand Hotel, and Marina was sitting in a comfortable armchair in the office of Dr. Helena Hayes, a psychologist specializing in emotional trauma and domestic violence. The office was in a discreet building in Notting Hill, with pastel-colored walls and minimalist decor that conveyed peace. Marina had sessions twice a week, and each meeting was a painful but necessary dive into her deepest wounds. "How are you feeling today, Marina?" Dr. Helena asked in her soft, welcoming voice. Marina took a deep breath before answering. "Better, I think. Some days are harder than others. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about everything that happened, wondering if I could have done something differently. But there are also moments when I feel like I'm getting stronger. As if each day that passes without him is a small victory." Dr. Helena made a note in her pad and nodded. "Guilt is a common feeling in situations like yours. But it's important to remember that you are not responsible for his choices. You did not provoke the aggression. You did not deserve what you suffered. Nothing you did justifies the violence." Marina felt the tears well up again. She knew this rationally, but emotionally she still carried an enormous weight, as if somehow she had failed to keep the family together. Dr. Helena worked with her on cognitive restructuring techniques, helping her identify distorted thoughts and replace them with healthier truths. It was a slow process, but Marina felt subtle progress each week. Meanwhile, Robert had arranged a safe apartment for Marina and Gabriel in a modern complex in Belgravia, with 24-hour security and a discreet but efficient monitoring system. The apartment had 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room with a sea view, and a balcony where Marina liked to have breakfast while watching the waves break on the sand. Gabriel had quickly adapted to the new home, especially because the building had a children's play area where he made new friends. Marina had also resumed her work. Before meeting Roderick, she was an obstetric nurse, passionate about helping women during gestation and childbirth. But Roderick had always discouraged her career, saying she didn't need to work, that she should focus on being a wife and mother. Marina had given in, putting her diplomas in a drawer and setting aside her vocation. Now, with encouragement from her father and Dr. Helena, she had decided to return. She started as a volunteer at the Golden Rose Maternal and Child Clinic, a community institution in Eastwood that served low-income women. The clinic was coordinated by head nurse Marianne Stone, a 50-year-old black woman with curly hair tied in a bun, a wide smile, and contagious energy. Marianne welcomed Marina with open arms and soon put her to work in prenatal consultations and pregnant women's groups. It was at the clinic that Marina met Dr. Lucas Taylor, a 38-year-old obstetrician who dedicated 2 days a week to volunteer work. Lucas was tall, had kind brown eyes, a well-trimmed beard, and a natural calm that reassured even the most nervous patients. He treated every woman with respect and attention, regardless of her social status or life story. Marina noticed this from the first day and felt genuine admiration. One Thursday afternoon, while preparing materials for a lecture on breastfeeding, Lucas and Marina talked about their motivations for being there. Lucas shared that he had lost his sister during a complicated childbirth years ago, a situation that could have been avoided with adequate access to medical care. Since then, he dedicated part of his time to ensuring that other women did not go through the same. And you, Marina? What brought you back to nursing? Marina hesitated before answering. The truth was that everyone at the clinic knew who she was. The video had circulated throughout the UK and her face was recognizable, but no one there treated her as a victim or a celebrity. They treated her as a colleague, as a professional, and that was liberating. I needed to find myself again, she replied honestly. I spent years living to please someone who never valued me. Now I'm living for myself and for my children. Lucas nodded with understanding, without asking further questions. That silent respect touched Marina in a way she didn't expect. There was no judgment there, no expectations, just humanity. While Marina rebuilt her life step by step, Roderick sank further and further. He had tried to contact former colleagues and business partners, but most avoided him. His name was stained, associated with scandal, violence, and diversion of funds. Companies that once sought him for consulting now blocked his calls. Kensington Developments had filed a formal lawsuit against him for embezzlement, and the investigation had revealed even larger amounts than initially imagined. Roderick would have to return everything, plus fines and interest or face legal action. Larissa had been officially dismissed and was considering leaving London to start over in another city where her name was not known. She blamed Roderick for everything, though deep down she knew her own choices had led her to that point. She tried to find another job in marketing, but every interview ended with the same uncomfortable question about her departure from Kensington Developments. The truth always came out, and opportunities disappeared one after another. Roderick, isolated and desperate, began attending a support group for men with emotional control issues. It was a recommendation from the lawyer he had hired, who made it clear that demonstrating genuine effort to change could help him in the process of regulating visits to Gabriel. Roderick went to the meetings but participated little, still caught in a mixture of denial and self-pity. Meanwhile, Marina was flourishing. The Golden Rose Clinic became her refuge, a place where she felt useful and valued. The pregnant women she attended came from realities as difficult or worse than hers, and hearing their stories of overcoming gave Marina a different perspective. She was not alone. Thousands of women faced daily battles against abandonment, violence, prejudice, and many of them won. Marianne, the head nurse, suggested that Marina participate in a support group for mothers in difficult situations that met every Tuesday evening at the clinic itself. Marina accepted with some hesitation, still not completely comfortable with the idea of exposing her story to strangers. But when she arrived at the first meeting and saw the circle of women sitting on folding chairs, sharing their pains and victories with raw honesty, Marina knew she was in the right place. She heard stories of women who had fled abusive relationships with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Women raising children alone, working 3 jobs. Women who had rebuilt their lives from scratch and now helped others do the same. When it was her turn to speak, Marina shared her story for the first time outside her family circle and medical offices. She spoke of the gala, the assault, the public humiliation, the viral video. She spoke of fear, guilt, shame. But she also spoke of the strength she was finding, her father's support, the small daily victories. The women listened in respectful silence, and when she finished, several stood up to hug her. There was no pity there. There was solidarity, there was recognition. "You are one of us now," said one of the participants, a woman named Jessica, who had survived years of abuse and now ran an NGO for women at risk. "And we don't leave our own behind." Marina left that meeting feeling less alone than she had in months. She realized that her story, however painful, could have a greater purpose. She could use her experience, her visibility, her voice to help other women, to show that it was possible to rebuild, that it was possible to be reborn. December arrived, bringing intense warmth and the promise of a new beginning. Marina was almost 9 months pregnant and felt the weight of her belly with every step, but she also felt something different, an inner strength she didn't recognize in herself months ago. She woke up in the morning, looked at Gabriel playing in the living room, touched her belly where her daughter stirred, and whispered words of gratitude. Gratitude for having survived, for having found courage, for not being alone. In the early hours of a Friday, Marina woke up feeling the first contractions. She took a deep breath, timed the intervals, and when she realized they were regular, she called her father and Dr. Beatrice. Robert immediately took her to St. Helena Maternity Hospital, one of the best in London, where everything was already prepared for her arrival. The medical team was led by Dr. Beatrice herself, but to Marina's surprise, Dr. Lucas Taylor was also there, acting as the assistant obstetrician that night. When Marina saw him enter the room in his white coat, she felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. Lucas approached, held her hand, and said in the calm voice she knew so well, "You're not alone, Marina. We'll bring your daughter into the world with all the care you both deserve." Labor lasted 7 hours. They were 7 intense, painful, but also profoundly transformative hours. With each contraction, Marina felt she was releasing not only the child growing inside her, but also the pains, fears, and hurts she had carried for so long. She screamed, cried, squeezed Lucas's hand tightly, listened to Dr. Beatrice's words of encouragement. And finally, as the morning sun already illuminated the delivery room window, Marina heard the strong, healthy cry of her daughter. "She's perfect," Dr. Beatrice said, placing the baby on Marina's lap. "A beautiful and strong girl, exactly like her mother." Marina looked at her. Daughter's red face, her tightly closed eyes, her small mouth crying energetically, and felt such overwhelming love that tears streamed down uncontrollably. Sophia. She would be named Sophia, which meant wisdom, because Marina had needed a lot of wisdom to get to that point, and she wanted her daughter to grow up wise, strong, aware of her own worth. Lucas observed the scene with a discreet smile on his face, touched by the emotion of the moment. He had witnessed hundreds of births throughout his career, but this one had something special. Seeing Marina, a woman he had accompanied in recent months, overcoming so much adversity, and now holding her daughter with such tenderness, was inspiring. In the following days, as Marina recovered in the private room of the maternity hospital, she received dozens of visitors. Robert arrived every day with Gabriel, who looked at his little sister with curiosity and a little jealousy. Friends from the support group sent flowers and kind messages. Marianne from the Golden Rose Clinic brought a gift basket made by the pregnant women Marina had attended. And Lucas visited every day, always with the excuse of checking Marina's recovery and Sophia's vital signs, but staying a few extra minutes just talking. During one of these visits, while Sophia slept peacefully in the crib next to the bed, Lucas asked Marina what she planned for the future. Marina thought for a few seconds before answering. She was still processing everything that had happened in recent months: the assault, the viral video, the separation, the lawsuit, Sophia's birth. Each event was a layer of complexity in her life. "I want to continue working at the clinic," she finally said. "I want to help other women who are going through what I went through. I want to show that it's possible to start over, that we don't have to accept crumbs of love or respect. And I want my children to grow up seeing that their mother didn't give up." Lucas nodded in admiration. "You are incredible, Marina. Do you know that?" Marina smiled shyly. "I'm trying to believe it." When Marina was discharged from the hospital, Robert took her, Gabriel, and Sophia to the apartment in Belgravia. The place had been decorated with pink balloons and a huge banner that read, "Welcome, Sophia." Gabriel was thrilled to show his sister the little room they had prepared with a white crib, a star mobile, and pastel-colored curtains. As Marina adapted to the routine with two small children, the legal process against Roderick advanced. The hearing for the regulation of custody and child support was scheduled for January. Dr. Cecilia meticulously prepared all the documentation, the gala recordings, Marina's medical reports, the records of corporate fund diversion, the evidence of infidelity. Everything was surgically organized to ensure Marina obtained full custody of Gabriel and Sophia, as well as fair child support. Roderick, in turn, had hired another lawyer after the first one withdrew from the case, citing a conflict of interest. The new defender, Dr. Marcus Lowe, was an older man, experienced in difficult cases, but even he knew that Roderick's chances were minimal. The recommendation Dr. Marcus gave was clear: negotiate, accept the conditions presented, show genuine remorse, and hope that the judge would allow at least supervised visits. Roderick was living in a rented apartment in Notting Hill, much smaller and simpler than the penthouse he used to inhabit. He had sold his imported car to pay off part of the debt with Kensington Developments, but still owed significant amounts. His savings were rapidly running out and no concrete job offers had appeared. He spent his days between mandatory therapy, support group meetings, and long walks along the waterfront, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. On a bright sunny afternoon, while walking along the beach, Roderick saw a woman from afar with a small child and a stroller. For an instant, his heart leaped, thinking it was Marina. But as he discreetly approached, he realized it was someone else. Even so, the scene made him feel a pang of something that could be regret or just self-pity. He had lost everything. His family, his job, his prestige, his friends. And it was entirely his fault. That same week, Roderick wrote a letter to Marina. Not an electronic message, but a handwritten letter on paper, as if the physical effort of writing gave more weight to the words. He tried to express regret, asked for forgiveness, said he was in therapy and trying to become a better person. He asked for the chance to be a father to Gabriel and Sophia, even if only through supervised visits. The letter was delivered through the lawyers, but Marina did not respond. She read it once, folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Perhaps one day those words would mean something to her, but at that moment they were just ink on paper. Marina was focused on other things. The Golden Rose Clinic had invited her to take over the coordination of the prenatal program, a paid position that came with greater responsibilities, but also professional recognition. Marina accepted enthusiastically. She would work 3 days a week, supervising consultations, training new nurses and developing educational materials for pregnant women. It was exactly the kind of challenge she needed. The press also began to cover her recovery differently. A journalist named Paula Morrison, who wrote for a widely circulated women's magazine, requested an exclusive interview with Marina. After consulting Dr. Cecilia and her father, Marina accepted. The interview was published in December with the title "The Woman Who Rose from the Ashes," accompanied by beautiful photos of Marina with Sophia and Gabriel on the beach. In the article, Marina spoke openly about the process of rebuilding herself, the importance of seeking help, support groups, and her new mission to help other women. The repercussion was immediate and positive. Thousands of women wrote messages to Marina through social media, sharing their own stories and thanking her for transforming pain into purpose. Some said they had finally found the courage to leave abusive relationships after reading her story. Others said they felt less alone, knowing that even a woman with financial resources and family support faced the same emotional difficulties they did. Marina read each message carefully and responded whenever possible. She realized her voice had reach, and she decided to use it for good. January arrived, bringing the hearing that would define the future of Marina, Roderick, and the children. The Family Court of the Royal Courts of Justice, London, was silent that Tuesday morning as all involved entered the room. Marina was accompanied by Dr. Cecilia, wearing an elegant but discreet business suit, her hair tied in a low bun. She firmly held her purse, which contained photos of Gabriel and Sophia, though she knew the children would not be present. Across the room, Roderick entered with Dr. Marcus Lowe, visibly thinner, his face marked by deep, dark circles that betrayed sleepless nights. When their eyes met for the first time in months, Marina felt a tightness in her chest but did not avert her gaze. She was no longer afraid of him, perhaps pity, perhaps indifference, but not fear. Roderick, in turn, seemed to shrink under the weight of her steady gaze. He knew he had lost not only his wife and children, but also any chance of easy redemption. Judge Isabella Foster entered, and everyone stood up. She was a 60-year-old woman with short grey hair, reading glasses hanging around her neck, and a reputation for being fair but strict. She asked everyone to sit and began the hearing by reviewing the case files. She mentioned the hotel recordings, the medical reports, the evidence of financial misconduct. Each word was like a sentence being built brick by brick. When it was Roderick's turn to speak, Dr. Marcus asked permission for him to address the judge directly, and also Marina. Roderick stood up, his hands visibly trembling, and tried to articulate the words he had rehearsed dozens of times with his therapist. "I made terrible mistakes," he said, his voice choked. "I hurt the person I should protect. I humiliated the mother of my children. I betrayed everyone's trust. I have no excuses, I only have regret. And I am in therapy, attending support groups, trying to be a better person. I don't ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I only ask for the chance to be a father, to show Gabriel and Sophia that people can change." Marina listened without showing emotion. The words were beautiful, but words were easy. Actions were what mattered, and Roderick would still need to prove with consistent actions that he had truly changed. Judge Isabella noted everything, and then asked Roderick some direct questions about his therapeutic progress, his current financial situation, his plans for the future. Roderick answered honestly, admitting that he was in financial difficulties but working to regularize his debts. He admitted that he still had much to learn about emotional control and respect. When it was Marina's turn, Dr. Cecilia presented her written testimony, which described not only the trauma of the assault, but also the months of rebuilding. Marina asked to speak and said, looking directly at the judge, "I don't want revenge. I want justice. I want my children to grow up safe. If their father shows real, consistent change, I will not prevent them from having a relationship. But this change needs to be proven, not just promised." The judge nodded and, after a brief pause to review the documentation, delivered her decision. Full custody for Marina Kensington. Child support set at a fair percentage of Roderick's income to be reviewed annually. Supervised visitation rights for Roderick Mitchell, initially once a month for 2 hours, which could be extended after 6 months if there was proof of continued psychological treatment and behavioral stability. The protective order would be maintained, but with flexibility to allow visits under the supervision of authorized third parties. Roderick closed his eyes in relief. It wasn't everything he wanted, but it was more than he feared he would get. He would have the chance to see his children, to try to build some relationship with them, even if under supervision. It was a start. Marina left the courthouse feeling a huge weight lift from her shoulders. That chapter was closed. Now it was time to move forward. Robert was waiting outside and hugged her tightly. "You were incredible, daughter. I am so proud of you." That same week, Marina received an unexpected invitation. A large association of businesswomen in London was organizing an event on female leadership and recovery after adversity, and they wanted Marina as the keynote speaker. The event would take place at the end of February at the same Royal Grand Hotel where everything had begun. Marina hesitated. Returning to that place would bring painful memories. But Dr. Helena, her psychologist, suggested it could be an opportunity for resignification, to transform the space of humiliation into the space of victory. Marina thought for a few days and finally accepted. As she prepared for the lecture, Marina was also experiencing other transformations in her personal life. Lucas had become a constant presence. He visited Marina and the children regularly, always. With the excuse of checking Sophia's development, or bringing some material from the clinic, but both knew there was something more there. A genuine connection, built on mutual respect, admiration, and time. One Saturday afternoon, Lucas took Marina, Gabriel, and Sophia for a walk in the botanical gardens. Gabriel ran among the ancient trees, while Sophia slept peacefully in her stroller. Lucas and Marina walked side by side, talking about everything and nothing. About musical preferences, about books, about childhood dreams. There was no rush. There was no pressure. Just two adults rediscovering the lightness of being accompanied without fear. "I like being with you," Lucas said suddenly, stopping near a lake where colorful koi swam lazily. "I don't want to rush anything. I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know that I'm here, for as long as you need." Marina felt her eyes well up, but this time they were good tears. "I like being with you too, Lucas, and I appreciate your patience. I'm still finding myself, still healing, but having you around makes everything easier." They didn't kiss that day. There were no grand declarations, but there was a silent understanding that something beautiful was being built, something solid, something healthy. Meanwhile, changes were also happening in Marina's professional life. Robert invited her to a formal meeting at Kensington Developments. He was creating a corporate social responsibility department and wanted Marina to be the principal consultant. The work would focus on developing support programs for pregnant employees, anti-harassment policies, and partnerships with community clinics like the Golden Rose. Marina didn't have to think much. She accepted immediately. It was a chance to combine her personal experience with real social impact, to ensure that other women within the company had the resources and support she almost didn't have. Roderick, in turn, was trying to rebuild his life in a more humble way. He had managed to get some freelance work as a financial consultant for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay anywhere near what he used to earn, but it was honest. He also continued faithfully in therapy and support groups. For the first time, he was starting to truly listen, to understand the destructive patterns he had followed for years, to accept responsibility without victimizing himself. In one of the group sessions, one of the participants asked Roderick what had changed for him. Roderick thought for a long moment before answering. "I lost everything, and that showed me that everything I thought mattered. Status, money, power, means nothing if you don't have character. Now I just want to be a decent person, a father my children can respect even if from afar." The first supervised visit took place in a neutral space, a colorful room in an institution specializing in family mediation. Gabriel entered hand in hand with the supervisor, looking suspiciously at his father whom he hadn't seen in months. Sophia was in the arms of the social worker. Roderick felt his heart ache at the sight of his children. He had rehearsed what to say, but when Gabriel looked at him with those big, confused eyes, all the words vanished. "Hi, champ," was all Roderick could say, kneeling to Gabriel's height. "Hi," the boy replied shyly. The 2 hours passed slowly. Roderick tried to play with Gabriel, showed him drawings he had made for him. He held Sophia carefully, marveling at how much she had grown. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkward silence. But it was a beginning, and Roderick knew he would need many beginnings before regaining any trust. The end of February brought the day Marina had awaited, with a mixture of anxiety and determination. The female leadership event would take place that night in the grand ballroom of the Royal Grand Hotel, the same space where her life had been shattered 6 months ago. But this time she would not enter as a victim. She would enter as a survivor, as a victor, as a woman who had risen from her own ashes. Marina was in her hotel room getting ready. She had arrived a few hours earlier to reacquaint herself with the space. She walked through the empty ballroom, touched the velvet curtains, looked at the stage where she would speak. She took a deep breath and felt that there was no more fear there, only purpose. She had chosen a long emerald green dress, elegant but comfortable, that highlighted her strength more than her fragility. Her hair was loose in soft waves. Her natural makeup accentuated her eyes, which now shone with genuine confidence. Before leaving the room, Marina recorded another audio message for herself, continuing the diary she had started months ago. Day 100. Today, I return to the place where it all began. But I am no longer that woman. I have transformed, and today I will tell my story not to lament, but to inspire, to show that pain can become power, that humiliation can become purpose. I am ready. Downstairs, the ballroom began to fill. More than 400 women, including business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and activists, occupied the elegantly arranged chairs. There were also some men, allies of the women's cause, including Robert Kensington, who arrived early and sat in the front row next to Lucas Taylor. The two had developed mutual respect in recent weeks, united by the love and admiration they felt for Marina. The lights dimmed, and a presenter took the stage to welcome everyone. She spoke briefly about the importance of discussing topics such as resilience, emotional recovery, and female empowerment. And then, with an emotional voice, she announced Marina Kensington. The applause was deafening. Marina walked onto the stage slowly, feeling each step as a victory. When she reached the center, she looked at the audience and saw hundreds of attentive, expectant, supportive faces. She saw women of all ages, all ethnicities, all backgrounds. She saw her father with discreet tears in his eyes. She saw Lucas smiling proudly, and she felt that she was exactly where she needed to be. "Good evening," she began, her voice firm. 6 months ago I was in this very ballroom, pregnant, tired, trying to keep up appearances while my life was falling apart inside. That night, I was publicly assaulted by the father of my children in front of hundreds of people. Many of you saw the video. The whole world saw it, and at that moment, I thought my life was over. But the truth is, my life was just beginning. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Everyone was completely absorbed in Marina's words. She continued, telling her journey without sparing details. She spoke of the humiliation, of the physical and emotional pain, of the days when she didn't want to get out of bed. But she also spoke of the people who supported her, of the therapy that helped her process the trauma, of the work at the clinic that gave her purpose back, of the women in the support group who showed her she was not alone. "I learned many things in these 6 months," Marina said, her voice filled with emotion. "I learned that true love never hurts. I learned that respect is non-negotiable. I learned that we can break and still rebuild ourselves stronger. I learned that our story doesn't end when something bad happens. In fact, sometimes that's when it truly begins." She paused and looked directly at the camera transmitting the event live. "I want to say to every woman listening right now, you don't have to accept crumbs. You don't have to tolerate disrespect, violence, or emotional abandonment just because you're afraid to be alone. Because the truth is, it's better to be alone than to be with someone who diminishes you. And when you find the courage to leave, when you allow yourself to seek help, when you rebuild yourself, you discover something incredible. You never needed to be saved. You always had the strength within you." The applause erupted before she even finished the sentence. Women stood up, some crying openly, others with expressions of renewed determination. Marina waited for the noise to subside, and then came to the most important part of her speech. "I recently received significant compensation from the lawsuit I filed, and after much thought, I decided that I will donate half of that amount to create the Sophia Kensington Foundation in honor of my daughter. The foundation will offer comprehensive support for women who need to leave abusive relationships but lack resources. We will provide temporary shelter, free legal assistance, psychological counseling, professional training, and support for re-entry into the job market. Because I was lucky. I had my father. I had resources. I had a support network. But millions of women don't. And they deserve the same chance to start over that I had." The revelation took everyone by surprise. Robert closed his eyes, moved, proud of the daughter he had raised. Lucas squeezed the armrest of his chair, impressed by Marina's generosity and vision. The audience took a few seconds to process the information before erupting in even more intense applause. This was not just a story of personal triumph, it was a commitment to social transformation. Marina concluded her speech with a final message. "I didn't just survive, I was reborn, and each of you can also be reborn, no matter how many times you've been knocked down. The strength is within you, it always has been. You just need the courage to access it." When she stepped off the stage, she was met by a line of women wanting to hug her, thank her, share their own stories. Marina stayed there for almost an hour, listening to each one with genuine attention. Some gave her contact cards offering help for the foundation. Others simply held her hand in silence, conveying solidarity without words. When she finally managed to pull away, Robert and Lucas were waiting for her in a quieter corner of the ballroom. Robert hugged his daughter tightly, whispering that he had never been so proud. Lucas waited his turn, and when Marina turned to him, he simply said, "You are extraordinary." And then, for the first time, he kissed her, a soft, respectful kiss, but filled with promise. Marina felt that this was the perfect closure to a cycle. She had returned to the place of her greatest humiliation and transformed it into the stage of her greatest victory. She had converted pain into purpose, trauma into mission, and she had found, in the midst of it all, not only her own strength, but also the possibility of true love. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Roderick watched the live broadcast of the lecture on his phone. He was alone in his rented apartment, sitting on the worn sofa, the lights off. When Marina announced the creation of the foundation, when the entire ballroom gave her a standing ovation, Roderick felt the full weight of what he had lost. Not just a woman, not just a family, but the chance to be part of something meaningful, to be better, to build something together. He turned off his phone and sat in the dark for a long time. The tears came slowly, silently. They weren't tears of self-pity this time, they were tears of acceptance. He had destroyed the best thing he had out of pride, immaturity, lack of character. And now all he could do was move forward carrying the lessons, trying to be better, trying to deserve at least the distant respect of his children. 2 weeks later, Marina was in her new office at Kensington Developments, finalizing the incorporation documents for the Sophia Kensington Foundation. The office had a view of the Thames and was decorated with photos of Gabriel and Sophia that she had hung on the wall. Her phone rang, and it was a message from Jessica from the support group, saying that 15 more women had contacted them wanting to participate in the meetings after watching Marina's lecture. She smiled and replied that she would prepare a larger space. The work was just beginning, but Marina felt she was finally on the right path. Not the path she had planned years ago when she met Roderick, but a better path, a true path, her path. That night, at home, Marina put Gabriel and Sophia to sleep, singing a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Afterwards, she sat on the balcony, gazing at the stars in the London sky. Lucas called to say goodnight and arrange dinner for the weekend. Robert messaged asking if she needed anything. Life was falling into place in ways she had never imagined, but which made perfect sense. Marina picked up her phone and recorded her last audio message for her emotional diary. Day 115. I used to think I needed someone to complete me, but I discovered that I was already complete. I discovered that true love doesn't diminish, it expands. I discovered that dignity is non-negotiable. And I discovered that the end of one story can be the beginning of something even greater. My name is Marina Kensington. I survived. I was reborn. And now I live. Dear listeners, we hope Marina's story has touched your hearts as it touched ours in telling it. We know that many of you may be going through difficult situations, and it's important to remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, but of immense courage. If Marina's journey has inspired you in any way, please share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming stories that bring deep reflections on overcoming adversity, self-love, and new beginnings. Leave a like if this narrative resonated with you, and tell us in the comments which moment most marked you in Marina's journey. We have prepared a special playlist with other equally moving stories about resilience and personal transformation that you can find here. Every day, we bring unique narratives that explore the complexity of life and the strength of the human spirit. Your participation through comments, likes, and shares motivates us to continue this work. Thank you very much for being with us. Until the next story.